This is another Imfosol production.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of The Male Perspective. This is where we talk about all things sex, entrepreneurship, and spirituality from the male perspective. We all have a voice, and it's time for the males to share their voice and their story. Today, I am excited to have my guest on today from the UK. His name is Limahl Mills, and he is doing a lot of great things. And so we're going to bring him on up and let him introduce himself as we talk today from the male perspective.
Hi, how you doing, Timothy?
Limahl, how you doing, sir?
Yes,
all
I'm
right.
Doing well,
we are live today.
Good.
Excellent.
How are you?
So, Limahl, as we get started, we're going to talk about what is, if you were to have a theme song, what would that theme song be and why?
Okay, it's a tricky question. I think if I were to pick a song that isn't one that I authored, because that is part of my story, I guess I would have to pick Sky's the Limit by Biggie Smalls. And the main reason for that song, I guess, is it's just that it's all within the title. You know, Sky's the limit. That's type of a phrase that I really resonate with. And it's a song that I know and obviously for a long time. But anytime, you know, I felt I was going through a challenging moment, sometimes I would play that song just to like remind myself, like, you know, you can do anything because the sky is the limit. And just the speech at the beginning of the song, more importantly with his mother, you know, is really like poignant. So that's one song that does resonate for me for sure.
Wow, I love it. The sky's the limit. Man, that's good. So tell the audience just a little bit about, I know you're doing a lot of things. I looked at your social media, and I mean, you mentioned you're an entertainer, entrepreneur, so you got a lot going on. So let's dive in and talk about what is probably the biggest thing that you have going on right now that you really want the audience to know about you.
Yeah, for sure. So I appreciate you letting me speak on your platform. I do appreciate that. So I work in the financial services sector. So if I were to rewind slightly before I got there, you can see the CD in the back. That's really like my whole start. So I went to university when I was 19, dropped out in my second year after acquiring a recording contract in the States. So I moved from the UK. Moved from the UK, got a record deal, was out in the States for a few years in Arizona first, Tucson, and then Los Angeles, Hollywood, California for the remaining part. I really got my first experience, big experience from that moment. Then after I left the States, came back to the UK, I carried on being an independent artist, did a deal with Interscope Digital, which was a big deal for me. I had my first EP released through them. And then as the years went on, you know, my experiences just really gathered. I worked in the brokerage business in London when I lived there. Got experience with diamonds, commodities, real estate, and land as well. And again, moving forward, you know, working in Switzerland and the Middle East, so I got to travel and work in a variety of places. I ended up, going into the world of finance and investment. So in the past few years, I've just really locked in as I retired from music. So that's not something that I do anymore. Put out my debut album independently and then said, that's me. And then after that, that's why I wrote the book, Luxurious Chores, which you can see in the back, which essentially just really summed up my journey and the lessons, life lessons that I learned, how I overcame adversity, and how I took extreme action to where I'm at now, which is working specifically in finance and investment and technology. So,
Lovely, man. So, um, so you stopped music. So what caused you to stop doing music?
well, essentially, I pretty much said and done everything that I wanted to do. As I said, I was quite fortunate to have those experiences from the age of 19. So, I turned 20 and I was living in Hollywood, So, for a black kid from the UK to get to that type of location is not normal, which I found, later in
Yeah.
life where not many people had those experiences that I knew. So they always kind of made me stand out and be a bit different because I just did things differently from a young age. But I essentially, as I said, did everything I wanted to do musically, said what I wanted to say. And because of my experiences that were uh, happening simultaneously, I really wanted to focus on those things that I had learned. So as I said, working in diamonds, commodities, real estate, and investments. Investments were the things that I really loved the most. So I really just decided to lock into that, started studying again, and just working on getting or working in the regulated space. And here's where I'm at now.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So do you have your own financial business? Do you do consulting, things of that nature in finances?
So I'm mainly focused on my company focused on private equity, which kind of led me into the sense or into the area of financial technology and education technology. So these are the areas that I invest and work in specifically. Um, but with private equity, asset management, these areas, I kind of embodied them both with my company because that's where I had my experience. So, like I said, I worked in real estate,
Right.
worked with commodities, but I'm a creative person by nature. So I needed to do something even in that space that allowed my creativity to come through, where I would, start or found companies, grow them, ideas to maybe sell them on or keep them, but just have that element of creativity where I had a bit more flexible because I couldn't just sit and just be giving people advice day in day out. That's not that's not where I wanted to fully lay my skills. But yes, consulting does come into
Exactly.
that. Mhm.
Okay. Um, Now, what is the name of your company? Is it just your name, Limahl Mills? What do you go? What is that?
No, so the two companies that I focus on now is Fortress FS, which is a fintech startup that I started with a good friend of mine, co-founder, ex-banker in Geneva, Switzerland, and the Mills Institute of Education and Technology. So education has been one of those things, self-education that has been the thing that has guided my whole career in the past decade, 15 years, let's say.
Mm,
So I saw like
okay.
the education technology space definitely as an area that, as an investment and as a sector, has a lot of growth. So I started the Mills Institute because most people would ask me that I would meet, oh, Lamar, how did you get into this? Or what made you go over here? And I decided to have some type of system in place that would actually help people get the things that they want. And over time, over the past 5 years, that's grown more into the technology side, offering things on a digital platform, smartphone curriculums, and things that are tied into what I'm doing financially and technology. So, yeah, so Fortress and the Mills Institute.
Love it, man. So I heard you meant. Now, how old are you?
I'm 33. I just turned 33 in May.
In May. Well, happy
Yeah.
belated birthday. I just turned 50
Thank you.
last week.
Okay, nice. Happy birthday. Did you have a good one?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh man, it was excellent, excellent,
Nice.
excellent. Could not complain. Best birthday ever. So
Yes.
you mentioned education and the Mills Institute, and talk to us about your strong beliefs in how education can help individuals rise up, out of the ashes, out of a lower state in life, and get to a place where they're thriving.
Yeah, definitely. Well, as I found going to university, I actually went to study music technology, and I found really quickly that the university system just wasn't for me. Again, coming from a creative background, I was studying media production and audio, so it was always geared around getting into the business somehow. But I found when I was doing my degree is that it just wasn't engaging me, that the learning style, I just wasn't getting engaged, and I found it very uninteresting. So in coming up to the beginning of the second year, I'd already set up a studio in my house with my friend. We was recording music, doing a lot of activity within the UK. Was on a few TV shows, and these are the things that led up to us both getting our record deal. But when I dropped out,
Hmm.
this was already on the cards for me anyway. We was planning to actually just completely leave that degree because it just wasn't for us and it wasn't for me at the time. So I found that with self-education, that's the thing that will actually get you to where you really need to go. Because when you start, I'm a avid reader. When you start reading certain
Hmm.
books and learning certain things from other successful people, digital programs, whatever it may be, when you start to curate your own education that is tailored to your desires and your purpose, that's where you really start to have the massive results in your life. So even just going back to when I lived in London, I was doing music at the time before the whole brokerage work and diamond work. I actually wanted to study my investment advice diploma then, and that was back in 2013. So when I picked that,
Right.
started properly in 2018, it was something I always wanted to do. I just didn't have the time, but I'd already found like that would be a direction that would open more doors for me going forward in life. So self-education, you really got to curate that for you so you can find your purpose and achieve your goals. That's what I think.
Mm, I love it. I love the way you articulate that. Create your purpose. Curate your education. Um, what are some of the key areas that you feel like is most important um, in leading yourself? Like what books, what have been helpful for you?
Sorry, Timothy, it just broke up in that last moment. I didn't hear the last part of the question.
Oh, right. So, what would you say in curating your own path and finding your education? What areas do you feel like a person needs to concentrate on the most?
Well, I guess it's difficult to say because everybody learns in a different way. I guess there are certain books I feel that would give anybody who is searching for their purpose, put them on the right pathway. For example, I do feel it's important to read books from your culture so you can actually get an understanding of who you are and where you're from.
Mm,
So books like
I like
Powernomics
that.
for me, Dr. Claude Anderson, that's like a staple piece in my library where I understand what is required of me as a black man going forward in life and in business. But of course, I've read uh, a variety of books, as you may see from the back, history books, financial books, self-help books, real estate books. Most of the things that I've learned in the past few years has really come from just my love of reading again. Like I always loved to read, but as I was, heavy into the music business, that kind of just really fizzled slightly because it was more focused on creation of music and not, you know, scholarly type of work, I guess. But yeah, having a good variety of areas and just equipping yourself in certain subjects because you never know when it comes up. For example, from working in real estate, I even took it on myself 2 years ago to start reading about architecture and construction because one, I love architecture, and two, I just wanted to give myself just that extra bit more even in that space. So when it comes to doing commercial deals, it's like I have an understanding of the development side, the construction side, what the time frame is like. So I can structure things in a different way than, somebody that just rents properties or just, wholesales deals or whatever. It's just a different outlook when you are approaching it. So just give yourself the tools, equip yourself with a variety of areas of books. That's what I would say.
Nice. Now, who was that author that you mentioned again?
Dr. Claude Anderson, and the author of Powernomics. Probably like if I have a hero. Yeah, if I have a hero, I'll definitely say it's Dr. Claude Anderson for sure.
I'm gonna have to take note of that. Put that down. Dr. Claude Anderson.
Anderson, yes, the legend.
And that is the power of what?
Powernomics is what it's called. Powernomics.
Powernomics.
Yeah.
Okay. I like. Now let's talk about your book. So you are an author.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
Good.
Yeah. I had not got around to that, but hopefully here soon I will be able to say that I'm an author. So good to hear, stories of young men like yourself getting out there and writing their story. So let's talk about, that journey to you actually writing your first book. What was that like?
Yeah. So again, after I think it was 2018, beginning of 2018, I moved back from the Middle East, and I'd gone through a time where there was a potential opportunity to seek a different type of recording deal because I was independent, but was having some talks with some record labels in the States. Went back to LA again, sat down with two of the major ones, Warner Brothers, Republic Records, and we were having those conversations. But I think at the time, so much had gone on where I felt like the reason why we didn't do a deal was more so they was looking for, somebody fresh behind the ears, so to speak, not somebody who had already had experience within the business, had their own company, traveled, etc. That was the kind of vibe that I got. So when we didn't, close any type of deal, that's when I decided to release my album just independently. I wasn't really too bothered about that. But then when I came back to the UK, it was kind of like a sense of the end of a chapter. And I always wanted to write a book. And the idea that I had in 2010 was completely different. I'd scrapped that idea. It was just an idea. And when I decided to write this book, I was like, I need to lock in these memories. I need to lock in these experiences because I know they'll be able to help somebody because it's, quite the story, from, again, going from a location like Leeds, United Kingdom, and, being in the Hollywood Hills at 20 years old, that's not many experiences people I know have. And I wrote, I would say 90% of the book in 1 week in 2018. I just sat down Monday to Friday, 9 till 2, and just poured out into my MacBook. And then at that point, I had 90% of the book. Yeah. It was just like a stream of consciousness that week. It was a really nice experience. But I felt like the book wasn't fully finished. So I left it for a year. And then in 2019, that's when I wrote like the final 2 chapters. About a year ago, but just over a year ago, I finished the book and then produced it, got it finished this year, beginning of this year, 2020, and then released it in February. So it took me 2 years to actually, pull it all together. But yeah, it's a really great feeling because, like I said, I'd wrote music most of my life. But writing a book is very different. I'd written scripts and things like that before, but a full book is like a whole different experience. But it's been getting some good feedback and it's been touching some people. So I'm happy about that.
All right. Well, we definitely got to get the name of that book real quick, but I want to talk about your background and how you, grown up in Leeds. I know nothing about Leeds, so I'm pretty sure most of my audience probably does not. So
Mhm.
inform us, enlighten us. What is that area like? And, what's some of the things you encountered, endured, and how you were able to get a perspective now that allows you to be successful?
Yeah. Well, Leeds is in the north of the United Kingdom, north of England, and it's actually the financial capital of the north. So it's the biggest financial market outside of London, which most people don't know. And this
Wow.
population, yeah, population is, I would say, just over 1 million. So it's not a huge city like you have in the States, for example. But I would say it's a multicultural city. There's predominantly white British, of course, that is the majority population. But there's lots of pockets of different races. So, for example, there's a large, I say large, but a small contingency of Caribbeans and Africans, say around 30,000 of us in Leeds specifically. And then you got a mixture of Indian, Pakistani, and Chinese, but predominantly Blacks, Caribbeans, and Black Africans dominate I would say, the ethnic races. And yeah, growing up here, it was always, I guess, different because my father, he's from the Caribbean, so you have that type of perspective, the migrant perspective into Europe. So it was growing up with that, you kind of aware of that straight away because okay, your dad doesn't sound like the people in the UK in Leeds. So there's that whole thing.
Yeah.
Just generally the whole race issue, which of course is a big deal at the moment. Just dealing with the prejudice, dealing with those racial tensions all the time, whether it's job, school, sports. We grew up with it the same way. I think that was a cool thing about living in America and the UK is that I got now a perspective from both sides. And we actually went through that the same way as, I'm sure yourself in the States as well growing up. So those were always challenges, but I always found that I wanted to see more outside of Leeds because I got the opportunity to travel like with my parents when I was really young. So, we went on holidays and stuff, not anything lavish, but, we got to see a few places, like went to the Caribbean, some places in Europe, etc.
Right.
So it was just starting to like open my eyes, and I feel travel, that's like my most favorite thing to do in the world. And I've been blessed in that sense to actually have these experiences, which has given me a wider global perspective. And Leeds is home at the end of the day. It's nice to be back because I think I did a calculation in the past decade. I've only been here 60% of the time. 40% of the time I lived in different countries. So just going through that and then coming back and then really plugging into the community again, it's been really good. But yeah, Leeds is a cool place. Yeah, Leeds is cool.
So what was the racism like? Like, is it compared to what maybe experienced in the US? Um, you mentioned that obviously with it being a melting pot and so many different people,
Mhm.
what were some of the experiences that you had in that arena?
Well, as it is in the north of the UK, it's again less multicultural than say London, for example, which is a larger population. I would say there's probably over 1 million Black people in London specifically, which is still a small percentage considering the population, right? So I guess that the type of racial or racism issues, prejudice issues were, just things like just that kind of, it's like silent racism in the UK, where in the States it's like more in your face, where UK it's like they won't really say it, but you can feel it, or the way they'll speak to you, it kind of comes across like that. And the the many experiences you had. So I talk about in my book, things like my dad, him growing up in the 70s, being chased in the streets, with his friends by angry white mobs, saying end this and end that. Yeah, and he's someone who could defend himself. But again, in those times, it was pretty wild. And then for me, for example, the flip side is I'm playing sports as a kid, 11 years old, and you got white parents screaming, "Oh, snap that N-word's legs and take him out," and all of this kind of stuff whilst you're playing. So, and obviously my
Wow.
dad addressing that. Yeah. So, or little things like, again, I talk
Wow.
about in the book where I wanted to learn violin when I moved to this new school, and parents said it was fine, but the teacher just for some reason just didn't give me that opportunity. And over the years of her teaching, it was always like animosity towards me, and I didn't understand why. I wasn't like I was a super bad kid, especially not in elementary school as you would know it. But yeah, just little things like
Yeah.
that. As you grow up, you start to see, oh, okay, they probably had some type of prejudice or racist aspects to them, hence why they was the way they were towards me. So, like I said, in England, it's more like
Right.
silent
Right.
racism that we grew up with.
I don't know. That doesn't sound like too silent to me.
Yeah, true.
Um, man,
Oh,
that speaks loud. But I understand what you mean. I mean, it's not necessarily the physical aggression, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like the emotional and the energy and the spirit have a greater impact than someone just punching you in the face and walking away. But an environment that just feels hostile, that has
yeah,
a long lasting effect on you. It
definitely.
very oppressive in nature.
Hmm.
And it's funny you mentioned violin. I played violin elementary, like third grade all the way up until high school.
Nice.
But it was in high school that I stopped playing because it was not necessarily the black thing to do. And
Mm,
so I can definitely understand the experience and just, wanting to play the violin because it's not necessarily a instrument that is often played by blacks. I don't know if you caught that. I don't know if you cut out, but I played violin and encountered a lot of, interesting situation when it comes to trying playing a black kid playing the violin. Got teased a lot, made fun of a lot,
yeah,
because that's not something that black kids typically play. So I definitely get that.
yeah,
Definitely
and
get
for sure. And again, because I learned the piano from the age 14. So I always think, I'm like, okay, well, if I had that basis of violin, from say 9 years old up until 14, I would have probably excelled even faster learning another instrument if given that opportunity. So, it's little things like that, that play around in your head slightly, but at the end of the day, you take it as it comes, right?
Absolutely. You makes you stronger. My mom said, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Most definitely.
Now, let's talk about your book. What's the title of it?
Luxurious Chores. So that is the front cover. I got that as a gift for my birthday, like a plaque, which I was really happy about. So yeah, that's the exact cover of my book, Luxurious Chores, How to Take Extreme Action,
Ah,
Overcome Adversity, and Get the Things You Truly Want. That's the full title.
I love it. I see you. You can't use book right behind you.
Yeah.
It. All right. Pete game, brother. All right, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously you said luxurious chores. So what is the thing in you that or situation that happened that was monumental in birthing that book? Talk about maybe one or two situations that really birthed and pushed that out.
Well, I guess it was definitely the fact, like in my career as an independent artist, I wrote and produced 27 projects in total, which was a mixture of first were a couple mixtapes, then it was releases, EPs, singles, and then eventually an album. So I was always disciplined to like write that amount of music. But when I released that album, I said everything that I wanted to say. And after that, it was like this space that was left open, where I was like, I still want to do something creative at this moment, but it wasn't music. Like my spirit was just not going towards music at all, because I felt like I had said what I said. And Luxurious Chores, even the title, that came from an interview I did in 2011, I feel, or 2010, where the interview asked a question about what I think it was something like, what did I think about music for me? And I responded at the time, music is like a luxurious chore, because when you do it for so long, it becomes like a chore, but at the same time, it's a luxurious one, because who wouldn't want to create music as a profession, for as a young 20-year-old or whatever. So it was always like that for me. It was like something cool, but it was a luxurious task that I had to do on a regular basis. And that feeling of being empty creatively, I needed to fulfill my own luxurious chores by writing something and doing something creative. And that's where, birthed the book. So it was really the need to just lock in the memories that I'd gone through, because I had to really reflect also, all the ups, the downs, where I could have gone wrong, things that went right, and just do my own analysis for my own sanity, I guess. And as I said, I wanted it to actually guide somebody else, because I know some of the situations that I went through that would definitely, help somebody else if they actually seen how I overcame that. So that was a real drive,
Right.
I would say.
So can you now? I want you to some more transparent. So can
Sure.
you open up a little bit more about some of the things that kind of produce that you went through? I know you mentioned it. What is something that was probably the most traumatic, if you're willing to share and just transparent about it?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you a personal one then. Right in the beginning of the book, um, I talk about an instance where, as I was, I think, 12 at the time, just started high school, and it was like a big, like, family disagreement one summer. And, it was at my grandma's house, and at the time, it was like a large family, I guess. My dad's siblings and would all gather, etc. And most weekends and big birthdays, Christmas, all of that. And from growing up
Mhm.
like that around loads of, aunties, uncles, cousins, it kind of just dipped off, because after this big, family disagreement, that was nothing to do with me at the time, of course. It kind of just segued the family, where people just didn't speak to each other anymore. And I talk about that because I never forget the time when that actually happened. And, there was arguments, and there was people on the street, just going back and forth. I don't know really what it was about to this day, but it was just one of those things that, like, kind of just was like a marker in my life, where it showed, even, with family, how they would go on with each other like that. And I never really wanted to, have that type of situation going forward. But
Mm,
it was something difficult to
mm.
overcome, because, like I said, everybody was close. And then when you grow up and then you're
Right.
not
It's
close with
family.
them
You
anymore.
expect more from that.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't really understand it as a 12-year-old. But when you grow older,
Yeah.
and then you realize how the relationships are formed, and, that those relatives just haven't been in your life, for over half of your life. You've been at, the
Yeah.
time you've been on this planet. It's quite a lot to deal with as a kid, because you don't really want to have to be thinking
Yeah.
about that. So that was, I guess, a little therapeutic for me, where I actually got to explain how I felt, in that situation,
Mm.
where even in the time and the music that I made, I guess that instance alone, I probably didn't ever really write about that. It was more about, old girlfriends and, breakups, that kind of thing. But it was never
Yeah.
like the deep, deep stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like the real
Yeah.
healing properties, I guess. So yeah,
Mm.
that was a personal thing I
Mm.
spoke about.
Wow. That's good. Yeah. Family definitely can, those family environments can shift your whole life, change your perspective, how you feel, you know, how you either become successful or not become successful just because of what went on in family. So I get it. You said it was a marker, and I really like the way you say that. It was a marker in your life. So I know many of the people that are watching, they have some markers when it comes to family situation in their life as well, so they can definitely relate. So we're going to cut this down now. We've kind of been on about 30 minutes now. I appreciate you coming aboard, and I definitely want to have you come back and just dig a little bit more into your life. If you could just real briefly, just share maybe your thoughts on what is going on in the U.S. right now in perspective, how you feel about it. The Black Lives Matter movement, the George Floyd, Trump, just being someone who's from the UK, who's lived in the U.S. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I'll try and be keep it short and succinct. But first thing with George Floyd, obviously a massive, massive pain, has been in the heart since that's happened. And I'll be honest with you, Timothy, in the past couple weeks, it's been very intense because you're seeing so many things happen since then. And really, it's just really sparked up something that's been, I would guess in the Black Americans mindset for a while, where people are tired of being treated like that. And as I said, the experiences are not as harsh, let's say in the UK, but we still feel it as Black people over here because it's a Black person. That could have been me if I was over there, right? So just the whole treatment towards Black people historically has never really truly been addressed. And I feel that is one of the big issues for America, where until, reparations comes to the table, some real change actually happens, you can't really see much things changing. In all honesty, that's just my take. Now with the other stuff that's been happening since George Floyd, other Black people being killed, which is horrible, and all this rioting and protesting, that's not all Black people. Again, this is just my opinion from what I've seen in research, but this isn't Black people that's causing those problems. That's other groups with different agendas. And because I know it's a political campaign year, it's election year, there's so many things that are intertwined with that message. And it sucks because, it should have just been about, obviously, George Floyd being killed and trying to get some justice once again for his murder. But now it's being mixed up into all this other stuff, which is really just diluting the message, I guess. And, with Trump, again, I'm not an American citizen, so obviously I can't vote or anything like that. But I think with him, a lot of the time, people put so much onus on him. And again, I'm not backing him up here for what he said. He has said some very reckless things over the years. But he was saying reckless things before he was a president. Sorry,
exactly.
As a celebrity and businessman, entrepreneur. So, but also he doesn't have all of the power, as we know. He's just one person. But I feel like with Black people specifically, I think there has to be more focus on, self-love and self-repair, so we can actually get our own economical situation right. So then we don't have to go through this song and dance every time, bad things happen. And that's really why I like Powernomics and Dr. Claude Anderson's other book, Black Labor, White Wealth, where he breaks these solutions down. And there are solutions available, but I feel we have to come together. And, with the situation in the US right now, I feel for, my people out there, because it's not a good time, obviously. But I feel like we really need to use that time to band together and really come to the table and be like, okay, we need to look at these solutions now and really do for self, because it's clear that these situations will keep going unless we actually have our own economical power, where we can deal with certain things in our own communities and police our own communities, etc. So
Right.
that's, I guess, my 2 cents.
No, that's good. I appreciate it, man. Powerful. Again, everyone, this is Mr. Limahl Mills out of Leeds, UK. He is the author of Luxurious Chores. He's in the finance. He's an entrepreneur. He's an artist, singer, so you can connect with him. You see his name going across Facebook and also Leon Mills, techleonmills.com. What it is?
No, textlimahl.com.
Did you drop that in there?
Yeah,
That's good.
textlimahl.com.
There we go.
It's the easiest way to reach out. And I think the last point, just to throw in there, actually, with all this stuff, that's what I meant to say, with all the stuff that's been going on, I actually, I just wiped off my whole Instagram because I just got so frustrated with seeing the content that was going out there. And I do a lot of testing with technology as well. So testing out the algorithms and all these things. And just even having the break from that has been good. Not that I didn't want to continue voicing my opinion, which I've left my opinion on my Instagram with some chats that I've had recently about what's going on. But I think people have got into this automatic response nature where they're not really, they're not really understanding what content they're pushing out and what they're receiving in every single day. It's not healthy, to see Black people just being killed in real time every day. And that's what it's been the past couple of weeks. I was just like, this is actually ridiculous. Like, I don't want to see that. Right.
Yeah.
So I decided to make that stance, and I'll probably come on maybe at some point again, but I just needed to just turn off that channel and focus on some solutions, because people were not being conscious enough about what they're posting and what they're seeing every day, which I just didn't agree with. So
the impact is almost, you almost don't know how much and how far just seeing those images over and over and over and over again. We know about it. Awareness is great, but then there comes to a point where, okay, let's stop. We're aware. Let's be solution minded and not just keep inciting that imagery and that emotion that is really not good on our mental health. I mean, it really isn't. So I totally understand that.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Good.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, man, I appreciate you coming aboard. We're definitely going to have you back on again to share some more of your insight. We'll get into some juicy topics later on. We didn't quite do that this time, but definitely want to hear you chop it up on some the other things that we get into. So again, thank you everyone for watching. This is the Male Perspective. My guest today was Mr. Limahl Mills out of the UK. Connect with him. He's the author of Luxurious Chores, and we will talk to you next time. Limahl, stay on. We're going to have a quick just wrap up before we drop off. All righty. Okay. Thanks so much for watching, everyone.
This is another Infosol production.